Hello, this is Zenchess Rants, and this video popped up in my feed, supposedly debunking the fine-tuning argument. Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you I'm not a theist. I may believe in some things, but honestly, I have no confidence in any of it. Let's get right into the video.
If God is the creator of the universe, all-powerful and self-existent, then here's a strange question. Why does life in our universe seem to depend on delicate physical laws that God apparently had to get just right? This is the heart of the fine-tuning argument. The idea is that many constants in physics, the strength of gravity, the speed of light, the charge of the electron, have to be just right in order for life to exist. And that precise balance, the argument says,
This guy's really smooth, by the way. Just listen to how soothing this guy's voice is.
suggests a designer, a cosmic engineer, a God who wants life to exist. As Matthew Adelstein puts it in his recent debate with Matt Dillahunty,
God, being good, wants valuable stuff to exist, so he'd set the constants to whatever value is needed for life.
but to me the phrase God set the constants to whatever value is needed for life is theological nonsense, turning God into a non-God. Here's what I mean. In classical theism, God isn't just any old designer. He's supposed to be a being with aseity, meaning God is totally independent, self-existent, doesn't depend on anything outside of himself. Unlike a human engineer who is constrained by the limits of his own intellect, limited by the materials available, and by the physics they have to work within. So here's the tension. If God needed to get the constants just right so life could exist, then doesn't that suggest some standard of physics, some framework of possibility that God had to conform to and work within? But if God is the author of possibility itself, then it shouldn't matter what the constants are. Such a being could just declare that life emerges no matter what.
Okay, so here's where the problem in this guy's argument is. He thinks he understands the mind of God. He thinks that a God doesn't need a clockwork universe. A God can just make magical things happen to achieve his goal. But this isn't a real argument. Even if you think God can do those things, doesn't mean he wants to do those things. You may think that if you were in God's shoes, you'd take all kinds of shortcuts and create a magical universe that doesn't run off the laws of physics. But you're assuming a lot about the argued creator of the universe here.
To say God has to follow rules is to turn God into a mouse that has to find its way out of a pre-existing maze outside of its control to get to the cheese, i.e. life. But for God, there is no maze. There are no walls. There are no rules. Anything is possible as that being decides what is possible in the first place. Thinking electrons? Done. Or as Hans Halvorsen put it in Phil Halper's video on the fine-tuning argument,
fine-tuning arguments strike me as very unprincipled in where they're willing to have omnipotence play a role. So you could imagine, for example, a really wild scenario where like God just said, well, I don't need to go to any of this trouble to have there be assembled atoms and molecules and then biological systems, and why not just take something like electrons and endow them with consciousness? I mean, God can do that, right? As soon as you say God can't do that, I think the theistic arguer is in a very hazardous situation.
I don't think they're saying God can't do that. But just because he could do something doesn't mean that's what he wants to do. I can think of many reasons why it'd be more appealing to a creator to create a complicated machinery that can support itself when designing a simulation or a universe. Let's make some analogies here. Let's say I have a very powerful computer from the future. It's so powerful that I can actually run a simulation of the universe on it. Would I rather that that universe simulates physics so that it is an actual copy of our universe? Would I rather that all the physics are hidden and that all that matters is that the world has NPCs in it that I can converse with? Well, all things being the same, I'd much rather have a fully functional universe that is logically consistent. And there are other reasons God might want a clockwork universe creation. If you think of the scenario where God simply imbues electrons with consciousness, every time that happens, that is God personally intervening into the creation. Now, I'm not one to judge God, but it might be tiring that you have to constantly, for the rest of your life, intervene in the universe to keep its magic going. But why not create a universe that runs by itself out of logical laws and requires no intervention? If your goal is to create sentient creatures, or whatever your reason is, it's a lot less work for you if the thing runs by itself than if you have to constantly magically intervene into this universe. The fine-tuning argument is an argument for intelligent design of the universe, but it is not limited to theism. There are some theories that our universe is constantly being reborn, and each time it evolves a little bit more to support complexity and novelty. In this scenario, the universe was designed, and the fine-tuning is evidence for it, but it requires no individual creator. Anyway, that's the video. I see this argument being made, and the main confusion seems to be that just because God apparently can do anything he wants, that somehow you can deduce that's what he would want if he existed. There are many reasons that whatever design the universe may have had for wanting the universe to follow rules, and the fine-tuning argument is a valid argument that is not refuted by the idea that since God can do whatever he wants, that he wouldn't create a clockwork universe. It presupposes that you can guess what a God would do, and that is very hubristic. Actually, when you get down to it, a God would see this universe in a very different way than humans do. The universe is actually pretty psychedelic if you've ever studied quantum mechanics or physics. God would probably see its totality in a totally different way than we do as limited, temporal creatures. When you think about things like how light would perceive itself as it moves within time passing, and all the crazy stuff that goes on in our universe, any God might see it a holistic and totally different light than we do. What we call physical laws and the laws of physics in the mind of God might just be an incredibly complicated, living entity. It does seem that our universe has the ability for incredible complexity, and I think it was one piece of evidence that the universe may have in some way been designed, whether by a God, an alien running a simulation in another universe, or just some process that we can understand. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Peace.